Survival horror is a genre built on tension, scarce resources, the looming unknown, and that constant feeling that something is just off. It's a formula that's been refined over the decades, with classics such as Resident Evil and Silent Hill paving the way. But what happens when an indie title dares to step into that same eerie fog-covered territory? How can it evolve from the classics while still learn to have its own identity? Well, that's where Holstin comes in, an upcoming indie horror title that wears its inspirations on its sleeve. But is it just another cheap imitation, or does it bring something new to the table? After playing the demo, I think I have my answer. So let's dive right on in. Hey, it's Dale, and welcome on in. Get cozy, stay warm out there in these last couple wintry months, and relax. Today, we're going to be talking about this nice little demo that I had the opportunity to stumble across. If you're anything like me, you probably have a wide range of interests, including, but not limited to, puzzle games, indie devs, horror games, and the like. I recently came about this little title from a studio I've never heard of, and I really wanted to talk about it. From a quick search, it seems like there's been a bit of buzz over the last couple of years, but I'd never heard anything myself. So the name of the game today is puzzle-like, narrative-driven, Resident Evil, survival horror, clone. If you can parse all that, you deserve a medal. Holstin is a light horror title made by a small Polish team by the name of Sonka. I'm already going to apologize because I know I will butcher every name that this game has to offer. Before going any further though, obligatory, there will be spoilers warning. I'll try to cover a brief synopsis on my thoughts of what Holstin provides before going step by step through my experience with it. As we jump into the demo, it first tells you that the content contained within will be related to the full game, but does not involve any content from the full release. And honestly, I think that's absolutely lovely. I can't think of other titles that include a demo as optional side content. While there's certainly something to be said for experiencing a taste of the full game in its entirety, I believe it's also quite novel to not ruin the suspense or intrigue by making the demo entirely self-contained that might relate back to the events of the main game in some way. In the end, it feels like a nice perk to those who have played the demo, while players who haven't aren't necessarily missing anything but more potential context. A wonderful decision for those like myself who enjoy getting immersed in the narrative and mythos that's available. The demo for Holstin breaks down into two halves as we follow the adventures of our character Tomasz entering a small Polish town to find someone who's gone missing. The first half specifically revolves around environmental storytelling and puzzles to solve, while the second half focuses more on the active combat side of things. I'll summarize my experiences with both parts of the demo, and then continue to give a synopsis of the gameplay. I wanted to start with the puzzle side first, and so we enter the Janowski house. Holstin sets the scene well, while still leaving things ambiguous, something the Soulsborne side of me absolutely loves. For those of you who enjoy story crafting and piecing together a broken narrative through context clues, reading notes, and scene dressings, this is for you. Holstin is absolutely oozing with charm, sometimes quite literally. When first introduced to the Janowski house, we are met by an absolutely gorgeous pixel art world viewed through an isometric camera. Movement is typical WASD, but in order for us to interact with the world to its fullest extent, we have to constantly shift the camera back and forth using the Q and E keys to change our facing left and right respectively. While this isn't exactly an uncommon trait, the way in which it's used felt very fresh in the setting to me, as it opens up more of the world beyond the simple 2.5D plane that we're introduced to. The controls themselves are pretty simple and straightforward, an absolute delight so that they don't detract from the core gameplay. Dots will appear on screen when near certain objects, letting you know that they are either important or interactable. Press left click or the F key to interact, right click or the G key to disengage. The dots aren't too large that they feel invasive compared to the objects. However, they did feel a little too small to notice sometimes, and I'd often forget which one I'd actually already interacted with. The scenery is well crafted and vibrant, while utilizing a muted color palette that lends itself well to setting the tone and atmosphere. While in the light, there's an emphasis on warm tones, while much of the game may take place in dark rooms. And this contrast really serves Holstin well in making us consider what truly feels safe. The music and sound design also play a key role in solidifying that atmosphere. The music is subtle, but lends itself well to a spooky setting, and the voice work is fine enough. However, be warned that the voice acting is currently all in Polish, and there's no other option for other languages. The game does have captions to help with this though, and there are a number of other languages to choose from here. I didn't find this to detract much from my overall experience with the demo, however, especially knowing that it was supposed to be set in a small Polish town made by Polish developers, but your mileage may vary. Light is a core component of the puzzle design here, and nothing felt overly complicated, though I did struggle with understanding what I needed to do to proceed at a couple of points. There were a number of wonderful elements contributing to what felt like an organic puzzle-solving process, such as how parts of the house started in darkness, and animations were subtle but noticeable to shift when light was introduced. If you're used to the early Resident Evil style gameplay, you will quickly adapt to the formula Holstin has to offer. We entered the Janowski house, and after a small bit of exposition, we're finally able to start exploring around. While the house is relatively small and contained, there are a number of rooms to explore, some that are immediately accessible, but most are blocked off until we're able to solve the environmental puzzle or find a key to open the path up. Let's be clear here, the Spencer Mansion, this is not. We're also given a map of the house to help navigate as well. Areas highlighted in red indicate rooms that still have information or items to discover to help progress, with a key present on the side to indicate important features. An inventory system is also present, though somewhat meaningless in this portion of the demo it seems. Bumbling through the inventory screen, we can view our current items that we've picked up. Clicking on them, we can choose to use, combine, or examine that selected item. While it wasn't really relevant in the demo, I imagine needing to examine and rotate objects will be utilized further on. In the same menus, we can view past logs and notes we've collected, which add to the overall story and help paint the general narrative. And that about sums up the basics of the Janowski house. Moving on to the second half of the demo currently available, we approach the tunnel. Here we continue our search for information from the first section, and it appears to be a bit more straightforward and directed than the puzzle-based Janowski house was. It is absolutely assumed that you've played through the first section though, as it utilizes almost all the same mechanics, but expands on them, with some slight variations here and there that we'll get to. I believe this section is going to be a bit longer as mechanics are further refined and developed, though there is far less emphasis on direct storytelling and narrative apart from logs and different journals that we can pick up during the course of the gameplay. With that said, the tunnels takes a complete opposite approach to how the Janowski house plays, becoming a roguelike combat showcase. The roguelike genre, for those who don't know, is focused on repetitive gameplay that improves on itself over time. Typically, the player will start off with random, diminished, or no abilities, items, gear, or powers, as they slowly amass more over the course of their time played. If the player were to fail their current run, they would then start over from the very beginning, and the things that they experience would be randomized, resulting in a different set of abilities, items, powers, etc., usually what we refer to as a build or loadout of sorts. Within this half of the demo, we collect a number of different items, utilizing our inventory much more than the prior section to hold a combination of weapons, health items, keys, and more. The tunnels also features a crafting system, not unlike other survival horror titles. This lets us combine different items together to make ammo for various weapons or restoration items, or to restore power to our equipment. Over the course of the demo, we accumulate a variety of weapons, avoid mutated or distorted humans, need to manage our health, and attempt to run through the halls of the tunnels in an attempt to get to our destination and find the person that we've been attempting to track down. Light is still a vital resource and helpful to overcome the different obstacles we come up across, as we always begin armed with a flashlight to reach the furthest depths of the tunnels. The second half of the demo doesn't just throw you into the thick of things, however, as it's broken down into 6 chapters to help the players slowly adapt to what the game is asking of them. Each chapter is overseen by an NPC named Zemislav Wodnik, acting as a tour guide of sorts to assist Tomasz through the tunnels, themed as a museum with side rooms containing plaques, displays, and statues reminiscent of the World War II era. As we progress through the chapters, these plaques line the walls in these side rooms for us to read, acting as a kind of tutorial, not unlike the signs or the owl statues from Legend of Zelda. While not just designed for the player, they are fully intended to be read in-game as well, providing a hit of diegetic game design while being fully aware that what we're going through is a game. It's through these prompts where we first learn how to kick and dodge enemies using a stamina meter that's unique to this section of the demo. And delving further in, we uncover how to combine various supplies to craft new items, how to aim and use a variety of weapons, as well as get some background lore to infer why the tunnels exist in their current state in the first place. Before veering onwards though, let's talk about some of the mechanical changes between the two sections. Fret not though, my word viewers, most of the mechanics remain the same. We still move with WASD, we change the camera perspective with Q and D, we have a pause and inventory screen, and we navigate the on-screen cursor with the mouse. How we interact with objects has slightly changed though, as we are now specifically required to use the F key. And while it might not sound like a big deal in the grand scheme of things, it certainly was something that took me a lot of getting used to, as I found left-clicking objects incredibly intuitive on its own. In addition, the character model now follows the cursor as it moves across the screen, changing Tamash's positioning ever so slightly as his body faces the direction the cursor is pointing, while we're still able to move in any direction. I believe this is due to the inclusion of weapons and the way in which they're utilized through the combat segments. And speaking of weapons, how they're used was something that I found incredibly interesting to the experience overall. When a weapon is aimed, we swap from the isometric camera angle to an over-the-shoulder third-person perspective to shoot, which alleviates some of the struggles I had with navigating the camera in this section. When the enemies are all around you or the screen is filled and chaotic, navigating the camera through the Q and E keys can often feel quite clunky and slow. Sometimes I would find myself mashing the buttons and overshoot the angle I needed, and other times I'd be taking it too slow as a precaution and lock myself out of seeing an enemy a bit better. If you were to stop aiming though, the camera adjusts to whatever you were last looking at and best matches that perspective in the 2xd angle. I would find myself aiming as often as I could, not to shoot any enemies, but just to better control the camera. And while I know that might sound a little involved, the seamless way the camera shifts is absolutely wonderful to weave in and out of. So we continue to cover the chapters. They feel a bit like training wheels, and we're learning how to ride the bike. The dialogue with Wadnik is solid and funny, if not maybe a little bit antagonistic and sarcastic, which offers an engaging way to learn the ropes. The last chapter of the demo is where those full gameplay elements come together, giving us that roguelike combat mode where you'll find most of the replayability coming in. And for what it is, it's not bad. We start with a full inventory consisting of some guns, ammo, restoration items, and are tasked to make our way through the tunnels. In my 3 or so runs, I haven't reached an end to the tunnels if one exists, but it felt natural to play, and I enjoyed the gameplay loop behind it. Here we focus on using the flashlight to unlock paths or see enemies while we travel from section to section in gated segments of the tunnel. Apart from just pure combat, we also need to make the decision of whether to kick enemies to stun them and sneak past, versus shooting enemies and making sure they're down for good, or whether we just want to conserve our ammo. Defeating certain enemies will unlock keys to access side rooms to restock on items and prolong the run. I can certainly see these combat segments between narrative beats and puzzles becoming an enticing formula to stay invested, and although maybe a little clunky at first, I found myself invested on the second and third runs going through. As an indie title, I find that it stays true to the suspenseful horror atmosphere while still providing a charm and personality completely unique to itself, ranging from the art style, the music, and the way that you interact with the world, among other aspects the game has to offer. It clearly takes the formula that survival horror has to offer, and it expertly kneads it into its own unique identity so as not to make anything feel stale. This is especially apparent when the game handles combat, completely changing the perspective to emulate the experience of a third-person shooter, something that I've not really seen another 2xd game utilize. The narrative also has me incredibly intrigued, and I wonder if we'll continue the story of Tamash, or if he's going to be relegated to a background component in the main game. I am very much looking forward to what I believe will be a sleeper hit, and I can't wait to see what else will come from Sonka. With all that said, let's dive into the meat and potatoes of my experience. I do stream most of the games you'll see on this channel live at twitch.tv/HeyIt'sDale. I do plan to review the games I've played on stream so far, as well as other content sprinkled in. Leave a comment below for something that you'd like to see. And while you're at it, hit that follow on Twitch and say hey, I'd love to see you there live. Also, feel free to jump into the Discord and join the rest of the community for our discussions. Links for everything will be down in the description below. And now, without further ado, let's enter the world of Holstin. But hold up, before we finish the rest of today's video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. As a little fledgling creator, it really helps the channel out and shows interest behind content like this. If you have any recommendations on something you'd like to see next, leave a comment down below and I'll try to get to what I can in the future. Holstin sets the scene, painting a small Polish town set in 1992. We find that we are in control of Tamash, looking for an old colleague by the name of Bartek. Records indicate he came to the Janowski house, and here we are, hot on his heels. We gain control of Tomasz, finding ourselves in a dark room, and our adventure finally begins. Starting off, I'm already captivated. We begin in a dark room, and I can barely see what's going on. I try moving around a bit and find the light switch, presenting one of the major themes in the house early on: darkness and light. There are two doorways leading further into the house. We investigate the one to the far right to find it has a key jammed into the padlock and cannot be removed. The other door requires a code that we don't presently have. After getting used to movement, a tooltip appears on screen, letting us know we can shift the camera orientation. Doing so unlocks a whole new perspective for us to investigate. Getting a better view of the room, we can see a box with a metal lid on it set along the wall near a door. Interacting with it tells us we can hear an electrical hum emanating inside, but the lid is stuck and won't open without a narrow tool. Lastly, we have the phone, something that we'll be returning to in a moment. As I start interacting with a number of items inside the room while shifting the camera, we stumble across a note that acts as a quick primer. We discover that our goal is to find Bartek, and presumably past endeavors have led us to the house where we can find the tunnel's map. Additionally, we have the help of Anita, our agent from beyond the house, who will phone in from time to time, ever so ecstatic to assist us. Closing out the note, we get some foreboding news from an organization known as the Trinity, as well as a heartfelt thank you from the Sonka team, along with an explanation that this demo is not part of the main game. As thanks for trying out the demo, we're given the first piece of the puzzle, the code to enter the door's combination. As I attempt to keep directions relatively consistent, exiting the open door southward takes you to the hall, and we are met with a terrible sight. The lights are out, discolored stains trail all along the floor, and alien-looking barriers block entry to more of the house. There are a number of doors throughout the common room branching elsewhere, and a set of stairs leading upwards. Our objective is to explore the house, search for clues or items to progress, and leave. I'm sure there is an intended order to explore, though I get the feeling I had approached things a little bit off, as we'll get to later. The room starts off in darkness, and I reach over to flip the switch just beside the door. With the lights on, we notice that several of the alien-like tendrils blocking one of the doorways recedes, along with some of the oozing stains on the floor. Here we learn we are in control of where we go and how to proceed early on. Our objective has shifted from just explore the house and hope to find something to locate light sources so we can open up more of the house and better explore the area. However, that brings up the question of, what the hell are these tentacles and stains? How did they get here? What purpose do they serve? And just why? Why do they exist? Before moving anywhere in the room, I take stock of the surroundings and look around with our new gift of light. It seems the hallway is in a bit of a mess. A couple pieces of furniture are knocked over or pushed aside, and off-putting orange-brown stains run amok along the floor, leading to several rooms like a trail. I notice some bloody footprints near the entryway we occupy and question if a fight had broken out at some point. I begin to shift around the room and notice that the ocean-like tentacles barricading our ascension at the stairs begin to move and shift when we grow closer to it, and I absolutely love that little detail. The amount of love and passion reflected in the animations alone have been a delight in the first rough 20 minutes of playing and has me solidly invested. As we continue to move around the room to the right, we begin to hear sounds playing. First what sounded like a woman singing, but what really caught my attention more was the sound of crying coming from a wardrobe along the far wall. Interacting with the furniture, we meet our first character, a scared little boy named Maciek. Tomasz attempts to calm the boy down and explains that we need his help. In response, the boy asks if we are Bartek, showing they have a clear link, somehow. It seems Maciek was aware Bartek was taking notes prior. We continue to prod Maciek, asking why it's so dark everywhere, to which the little boy responds that he doesn't know. He does mention that a lady in a white dress messed with the electric box in the vestibule, however. We take our leave and continue walking around the room. I head to a closed door facing south, take notice of a woman's voice singing, and instantly nope out of trying the door. I bumble away from the door, find a lamp without a light bulb, and am prompted to flick the switch on or off. Another clever use of light and interaction with things in the environment. I like it. However, we do not have a light bulb, so it's currently useless to us. I continue to stumble my way through the house and end up in the bathroom for a time, finding another lamp in the process. I try to flick it on and it stays unlit as we find out there is no power. However, this lamp does have a light bulb, which we proceed to take out and add to our inventory. As a professional video gamer, I of course travel back to the first lamp we investigated, screwed in the light bulb, obtained light, watched the creepy tentacles quickly fade away, and voila! Passageway upstairs has been achieved. This is where I first recognized light was the impacting feature granting access, and I really need you to listen to how excited I was about this discovery.
Flip the switch.
Oh. Light controls it. Oh, fascinating. Oh, this is so neat. I continue yapping away the chat and explore a few of the other rooms that are fully eclipsed in darkness and don't make much progress. I finally interact with the door leading south towards the woman singing to find that it's locked and we can hear a lady humming behind it. At last, we finally make our way upstairs. However, much to our dismay, we learn it is dark upstairs as well, lit only by the occasional flash of lightning from beyond the windows. At some point, we are going to need to learn how to get the power active in more of the house, as we know at least some of the building has electricity. Stumbling around the upper floor, we come across a dull knife before the shriek of a landline phone rings. Instead of immediately going down to answer the phone, however, I continue poking around, where I find a letter, presumably written by Maciek, reinforcing how he won't steal things from Grandpa and Grandma's room, especially when locked. Speaking of Maciek, we also have another encounter with him again in yet another piece of furniture. Tomasz begins to question how Maciek made it up here, and in quite a cheeky fashion, Maciek responds that he's very good at hide and seek. Touche game, I can respect the self-call-out. Maciek once again references the white dress lady, claiming she messed with the box in the vestibule, and that's why the house is dark. Annoyed with the constant ringtone, I begrudgingly go back downstairs and make my way towards the phone and finally speak with Anita. From the get-go, you can tell the two don't particularly enjoy the other's company, and are working together more as a means to an end. We don't quite understand the why yet, but you can tell there's tension there. Anita asks if there's been anything unusual, as if anything we've seen in the house thus far would qualify as usual, and reiterates that we need to suck it up and trudge along if we want to find Bartek. She does offer that the ooze, or plasm as she calls it, doesn't like electric light. She chastises Tomasz for not figuring out the connection before Maciek and ends the conversation mentioning the electrical box in the vestibule. Now, that box has been mentioned a number of times, and one would think it's incredibly important. However, I keep yapping away to chat and completely overlook its mention and forget its existence. So I continue to the family room trying to snoop out any more clues, then onwards to the kitchen, neither with any meaningful success in their perpetually darkened state. The phone starts to ring again, and Anita is growing frustrated with our lack of progress. Confused on what to do next, I attempt to take the bulb out of the lamp in the main hall and meander around some more before putting it in the fixture once again and heading back upstairs. I speak with Maciek again and initiate a conversation asking if he messed with the bulbs and fuses. Maciek comes clean and admits that he broke the light bulbs because he figured the white dress lady would be scared of the dark, like how everyone else is, then afterwards messed with the fuse box before hiding under the couch in fear. I continue to stumble around the house upstairs, finding a locked door to the east and another ruined room, appearing to be a wrecked bedroom. We do find a lamp in this room as well, however there's no bulb or power accompanying it. Even if we were to try and yank the bulb out of the lamp downstairs though, we run into the issue of being unable to proceed upstairs due to the tentacles growing. Back to the drawing board it would seem. After a solid 15 or so minutes of running around and exploring, I finally head back to the vestibule trying to find anything to interact with, and then it dawns on me. I have a thin implement to open the box along the wall. At last, we have tasted success, but not for very long, it would seem. For the fuse box is yet another puzzle for us to overcome. There are 4 color-coded boxes that correspond with the same colored areas on the map on the back of the lid. The problem? There's only one fuse for us to work with. After a bit of debating, I decided to take the fuse out of the red box and put it into the yellow to access more of the first floor I haven't been able to access yet. Our first stop is in the bathroom, now fully cleared. Inside, we find a watering can and add it to our inventory. However, the water from the sink is too murky for us to comfortably fill the can. We leave the bathroom and talk with Magic once again, who tells us to hide under the couch in the living room. Completely ignoring his advice, we move into the kitchen and flip the light switch on, revealing the entire room to us. Poking through the drawers, we find a set of keys with a tag and add it to our ever-expanding inventory. I do notice a cabinet that's been pushed in front of a door and promptly move it to the side to enter the new room. And while I appreciate the effort, I just have to ask, what is the cabinet blocking? The door swings outwards. It's not barring the door from opening, and anyone inside the locked room can easily just tip the cabinet over to get out. Not wanting to question things further, we step inside and find ourselves in the other half of the living room where we can flick the light switch on. With the lights on, we make our way through more of the living room undisturbed. I uncover a charred hand in the fireplace that looks to hold a note of sorts. It reads like a confessional, a last note of a mother who just gave birth atoning for sins. They mention they won't be able to attend the penitent mass, a possible link to the Trinity that was mentioned earlier, and plan on removing the root of evil from their body, something that was mentioned during a church sermon at some point. Before I can check the couch, however, the phone goes off once again, so I make my way back to the vestibule just to be berated by Anita once again for taking so damn long. Anita does mention the map though, and I pull it up, realizing there's still more to uncover in the living room. Upon returning and checking under the couch, we find yet another fuse to plug into the electrical box, opening up more of the house to us. I decide to arrange the fuses to cover the red and green regions, opening the stairway and first half of the upper floor. Talking with Magic, he explains that he had taken the fuses away and crushed the bulbs, like he commented earlier. Keep that in mind. With the path opened up, now we can push another cabinet out of the way of a new door. It leads to a bathroom, where we discover a functioning, clean faucet and fill the watering can. Investigating shards on the ground, we unearth broken light bulbs. However, it seems they've been destroyed through some blunt object that had extraordinary strength behind it, going on to crack the bathroom's tile itself. Was Magic really the one to do this? The door to the east is unlocked using the key with a tag found in the kitchen. It grants entry to a small bedroom, or as small a room as can be. The house and rooms in Holstin are absolutely massive, coming from someone who thinks a 600 square foot apartment is a mansion. Tinkering with a lamp, we can take out a light bulb and stash it away. The amount of power we now have with 2 bulbs feels crazy, being able to provide light in more locations now. We continue on further south, following a blood trail from the stairs, and come to what appears to be another larger bedroom, one we can assume to belong to Grandpa and Grandma that Maciek wrote about. The room starts off dark, and we hear the woman's humming from the floor below, loudly. A pool of blood is resting a few feet from the entryway as well. One half of the room is covered with tentacles, and when we shift the camera, it appears that there's an open window, where another tentacle is writhing away. I promptly move a nightstand holding a lamp in front of the window without even thinking about it, because it's a video game. Leaving the room to go shift power upstairs, Maciek calls out to us again from the wardrobe in the upper hall. He explains that his grandpa has a rifle, seeing it when he didn't go to school one day. Curious, I wonder how this will be useful to us in the future. We go through the process of switching the green fuse to blue and return to the second floor. I enter the first bedroom and turn the switch on. With the room open, we find a vodka bottle intentionally hidden in a closet, but it doesn't seem to be of much use to us. I put the bulb back in the lamp and open up the next room. One last look around and I discover an old ring sitting on a nightstand beside the bed. Not much is explained about it, and the description is relatively plain, though it does state runic insignia are inscribed on its head. Interacting with the item, we can turn and rotate it, seeing a shape that instantly makes me think of Tetris. Oh well, gotta move on. Moving on, we enter yet another bedroom that looks to belong to a young child, or 2? There's a bunk bed with both mattresses clearly made, though we've only met one child so far, haven't we? I push any questions out of mind. We still have a job to do. Rotating the camera, we see the lamp from the window in the grandparents' room overlooking some tendrils blocking off more of the immediate area. In the corner of the room, we find a torn notebook labeled Kasia's diary, though the contents are apparently scribbled out in crayon. A photo of Gregor Czechowski is taped to the cover. I have no idea who Kasia is, however I looked up Gregor Czechowski, and apparently he's a very popular Polish film composer and rock band member associated with the band Republica. Interacting with the wardrobe, we meet the Polish nightcrawler once again, Maciek. He inquires why we have Grandpa's ring. He goes on stating that Grandpa got angry when he noticed Maciek watching him play dress-up with a fairy statue. I begin to leave and wander around, trying to figure out what I need to open next. After a few minutes, I return to the room where we push the nightstand and discover the light switch has been completely broken. I proceed to swap the light bulb out of the smaller blue-walled bedroom with the lamp we pushed over. Feeling confident in myself after taking way too long to realize, I switch the blue fuse for green and return upstairs. I realize that I need a second bulb to keep rooms illuminated so I can get through upstairs, however. I try to interact with more of the bedroom and don't realize that there's a ladder leading down to the room below. You know, the room with the creepy lady humming behind the locked door on the first floor. Let me just play you the interaction when I first came down. So I need both light bulbs in order to do that though. So how do I do that though? Because I can't do that unless... The woman calls out our name, and I instantly nope out, scurrying to run away as best my little feet could. I thought it was going to devolve into a chase or something similar to what Maciek described, kind of like a Mr. X situation circling back to that Resident Evil influence. After all, we just stumbled upon this woman in the most bizarre fashion. The house has been ransacked or turned over. There's a collection of miscellaneous ooze now occupying the building. Wild anemone-like tendrils appear in the darkness. The door to the room on the first floor was notably locked, indicating whoever was inside most likely didn't want to be disturbed, and a blood trail led upstairs to the room above, where we descended down an open ladder. But hey, the ladder down was still open, so clearly she was expecting some company, right? I just feel bad I didn't bring any Christmas gifts. I recompose myself and steel my resolve to descend the ladder once again and meet the mystery woman. I do look around the room a bit more, however, and uncover some more notes labeled child diagnosis. They revolve around Maciek, who has showcased a clear display of intelligence and eagerness to learn, especially with physical processes such as electricity. The notes indicate he tends to play with items like batteries or light bulbs. But wait, didn't Maciek destroy the... The note ends, stating that if left unattended, the boy's interest may create an environment that puts his health or life in danger. This seems like quite the functional family. Now, stay with me here, and I might be grasping at straws, but the name discrepancy is very interesting to me. So much of Holstin seems to have been built with intent and purpose. The name listed in the diagnosis could be attributed to a simple oversight, or it could be a direct reference to another family member we've not seen, such as Maciek's twin brother, who would occupy the other bunk bed in the children's bedroom. I'm not sure which side of this to interpret, and I think that's part of the beauty the Sonka has cooked up in how Holstin unfolds. Both of these ideas are perfectly valid. Leaving the pondering aside, we traverse down the ladder and find ourselves in the office. I make the sensible decision to ignore the woman screaming our name in favor of exploring the room a little bit more. My first instinct is to visit the entry door, and we unlock it from the inside. Next, I interact with a statue set along the wall. It appears to be a woman holding two jars. A nameplate reading Woglind guarding the Rheingold, a curious nod to Norse mythos. The jar in the left hand is sealed, and the right jar has a piece of paper inside. The note mentions offering a betrothal ring. How funny. We had found a ring earlier. Thinking emoji. Satisfied with poking around, I finally strike up conversation with a woman we find to be called Beata Szymanska. She seems to be familiar with who we are, referring to us as Tomas. I'm unaware if this has any deeper meaning in Polish and can be attributed to an intentional misdirect, or if Tomasz and Tomas can be used interchangeably. Apparently she heard noises inside the house and shut the door, thinking it was a random stranger, which continues to beg for so many more questions. Tomasz questions why she's here, to which her response is that she's a neighbor, and retaliates asking what would happen to this place if the others were gone. She quickly changes the subject, talking about the drapes and how everyone will be jealous of her dress. Her demeanor feels so detached, as if she's lost in a dream or doesn't recognize the gravity of the situation going on. Beata ends the conversation, commenting she's going to begin sewing. Interacting with her again, however, it seems the sewing machine is in the basement, and the only way to enter? Yep, it's through the padlocked door in the vestibule, the other door we haven't been able to enter yet. Continuing to poke around in the current room, however, I interact with the Woglind statue once again to find she's carrying a hollow jug, and there is a discoloration on the ring finger of her left hand, resulting in a prompt to put on the ring or pour water in the jug. I put the ring on the statue's finger and hear a clank of metal inside the statue. I then interact once again and fill the jug with water. Once both have been completed, the statue slides over and we can now see a safe set into the wall. Opening the safe gives us a rifle, our first weapon to be obtained. This must be the fairy statue that Maciek had mentioned earlier. As soon as rifle get, the phone starts going off once again. We return to the vestibule and Anita is growing even more impatient as we diddle around. Yes, I know we have a job to do, woman. Have you ever tried to explore a spooky house while trying to entertain a Twitch chat? It's hard work, I tell you. However, being back in the vestibule means we're back to that locked door. We opt to completely ignore physics and interact with the entryway, which prompts us to shoot the padlock off, and we now have access to the floor below. We finally enter the basement, which shockingly looks like one of the smallest rooms in the house. It appears to be cozy enough though, if not a mess, much like the rest of the house. Like most of the other rooms, it starts off dark, though a projector is turned on, facing a screen along the far wall. Investigating the back of the room, we find notes along a couch that act as a list of credits for the team at Sonka, reinforcing the diegetic nature of the developers interacting with the players. Much to my surprise, inspecting the wardrobe mentions storing summer attire. I guess Maciek hasn't learned how to fast travel to the basement yet. He might need to see a location first in order to teleport there. It seems I am stumped once again, however. We are close to our goals, and I can only assume the projector is the final key to unlock the blueprints. But what have we missed? I pull up the map once again to find that the first floor hall, kid's bedroom, and parents' bedroom still have goodies for us to find, but the kid's bedroom has the essentials icon tagged. Revisiting the hall, I take the bulb from the lamp that opened the stairway. I walk around a bit more before returning to the vestibule to shuffle some more fuses around. I take out the ground floor red fuse and swap it in favor of blue, fully powering the upstairs now. I take the ladder up, bypassing the need for the stairs, and secure the light bulb in the grandparents' room, opening up access to the kid's bedroom where I find Beata hanging around now. While here, I push the lamp in the far corner over, but don't have a bulb available to provide light. So, like an expert gamer realizing the solution to the game's most difficult puzzle, I visit the parents' room on the other side of the wall, take out the bulb in the lamp, and presto! We now have light to investigate a desk in the kids' room. This discovery nets us a projector slide, and our end goal is finally in sight. Before leaving, I decide to speak with Beata once again, who starts off with an angry tirade about how the kids made the mess, and they should be the ones to tidy it up. It seems her purpose in coming here was for pencils and the like, to continue her measurements for the dress she wants to sew. She comments that Janowski took the stupid padlock off, implying she believes the family is still around? Beata is so far off her rocker, and I'm thrown for a bit of a loop, as it was clearly us who, shot a rifle at the door maybe 50 feet away from where Beata was staying. But the real takeaway for me here is that Beata mentions kids, as in plural. So far we've only seen Maciek, but where has the other been? And who is the other? I can assume that given that we found Kasha's diary in this room, she may be the sister of Maciek? Or did the other name on the child diagnosis really mean that Maciek had a twin? I'm still kind of perplexed on this. The last cursory sweep reveals Maciek to be in the wardrobe here. He swipes our slide, thinking it was called A Lady in the Window, but is disappointed that our slide only seemed to contain boring lines and squares before giving it back to us. I take my leave and remove the bulb from the grandparents' room lamp, which is what I should have done all along, place it back in the parents' room lamp, and make our way back downstairs accompanied by the lovely ringing of the landline phone. Once we answer the phone, Anita asks if we've made any progress, and Tomasz starts to explain the slide we received. Anita mentions the school has a projector, but seems hesitant, though Tomasz explains the projector is here in the basement. I question if this was supposed to be our lead to start learning how to access the basement, or if I somehow missed a step here somewhere. Regardless, we hang up the phone and proceed downstairs. Or at least we would, but my dumbass forgot all about the fuses and left all of the upstairs powered. So I have to shuffle back the vestibule, rework the fuses, huff, 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 back at the projector. I go to insert the slide, and we've hit the end. We get a thank you screen and some cheeky banter from the devs, reading, "The Janowski house demo ends here, but the story will continue. However, don't focus too much on what you've seen here. There probably was no slide. There was no white dress lady. Were the rooms always so empty?" I absolutely love the way Sonka has tried to mess with the player's mind the entire time. The message ends explaining there's still more to Holstin and implores the player to fill out a survey and wishlist the game on Steam. And with that, we have successfully completed the first half of the Holstin demo. Now it's time we tackle the second half of the demo currently available. This section will be a bit more straightforward and more akin to a standard tutorial, going over how to incorporate the new mechanics unique to this section. Any controls I go over will apply to mouse and keyboard, but the game also does offer controller inputs as well. We'll cover the different chapters that divide the section and then discuss the final couple runs I attempted at the end. Starting off, the tunnels is broken into 6 different chapters. The first 5 act as advancing tutorials that will help form a cohesive narrative, while the 6th, aptly named the Tunnel Challenge, is the full unrestricted roguelike gameplay that we've learned how to play from the prior chapters. We start Chapter 1, the Interactive Exhibition, and begin our journey with Tomasz anew. As soon as we load into the chapter, we are immediately greeted by a brand new face, an older man by the name of Przemysław Wodnik. He immediately welcomes us to the interactive exhibition of the Museum of the Warmia Land in Holstin, also known as the Tunnels, where we were attempting to get to in the last section. The exhibition title is Holstin, the Combat and Movement Mechanics. Yet again, another nod to the demo itself being addressed in-game. I really enjoy this already, as it perfectly encapsulates the tone in which Wodnik is talking, and cements the kind of character he is right off the bat. He may be fully serious, but there's a twinkling that he may know more than he lets on. Wodnik continues on, explaining that things aren't quite set up right, and will need to be arranged more further on, but offers up a demonstration of what is available now. Tomasz pushes back a bit, inquiring about what Wodnik meant by demonstration, where we learn that the plaques we encounter will be how we read and learn about the new features presented, resembling the likeness to a museum of some kind. With the intro dialogue done, we now have full control to move around. We find ourselves in a dimly lit cell, which looks to be living up to the name of the Tunnels. I assumed that we were in a sewers of some kind and questioned how we would be moving on. I instantly began to fiddle with controls, figuring that Q&D would once again shift the camera to try and gather my bearings. As I start moving, a tooltip appears at the bottom of the screen, indicating that the interaction key is now specifically F, no longer allowing right-click. One of the first things I notice as we start moving around is that Tomasz no longer faces where we move to. Instead, his facing is entirely reliant on where the cursor is, while his body moves independently. I continue to explore around the starting area and notice how run down everything is. The atmosphere is damp and dingy, and there is a suspicious lack of light everywhere. From what I can see, old beat-up furniture is spread haphazardly through the cell, and remnants of food is found on shelves or desks that litter the area, which has me wondering if people live down here. The odd tentacle strands erupting out of the ground do make a return though, which oddly felt like a relief seeing a familiar face from the prior segment. Investigating a nearby desk, I find a rusty key. Much like the last section, it will appear in our inventory, and we can interact with the items in a number of ways. However, the key doesn't appear to have much use from the menu itself. Having braved enough of the environment immediately nearby, I make my way towards a door set along the tunnel wall near Wodnik. It has a green light above the entryway, I assume to draw our attention to it. The door opens without resistance. However, my true gamer instincts were tingling, and as I felt like the game intended for me to go inside, I wanted to explore somewhere else first. So instead I head over to the other door on the far side of the cell. This door needs a key, however, and I felt rewarded for having searched through the desk earlier. Once the key is used though, it does fall apart on use, indicating they will only be useful once. Not wanting to enter inside quite yet, I look around the cell a bit more and find yet another door requiring a key I now don't have. I return back to the first door to talk with Wodnik, resulting in some banter back and forth regarding the plaques. There's a cheeky line from him explaining that while we're not forced to read the plaques, we better not say anything if we don't know something afterwards. Wodnik then stumbles away to be closer to a door entry and light fully shines on him, highlighting what appears to be a bloody or infested leg. Finally happy with investigating the cell fully, I enter the first doorway. It appears to be filled with war regalia or memorabilia, very much resembling that of a museum room, complete with statues wearing uniforms and display stands along the walls. As I enter the room, my first thought is to look for a light switch and see if the tentacles begin to grow, which, to my surprise and satisfaction, they did not. I investigate the display stands and read through a couple prompts regarding game controls, giving us information we had already gleaned in the last section, such as how to move the camera. Another prompt lets us know that some interactions are only available from specific camera angles though. I take my leave and proceed to move into the next doorway where Wodnik is standing, the same entry I'd opened with the rusty key. I take a gander at a nearby podium inside and find another rusty key. Reading the prompt here, we learn the full term for what's been growing out of the ground: tentacle-like pseudopod. The prompt goes on to explain that the pseudopods will hide when electric light shines on them, and that we can conserve the flashlight battery life by using the corresponding hotkey. We're warned that enemies can see the light, however, and will react accordingly. Now, you might be asking, but Dale, where's the flashlight? As was I, dear viewer, and as I investigated the nearby pedestal, I quickly found my answer. As I open my inventory though, I discover the flashlight is currently at 0%. I play around with the flashlight a little bit before deciding to move on. Wodnik has since moved towards the far end of the cell, and I interact with him once again, unsure of where to continue. He explains that he has explored the tunnels so well, he knows them like the back of his hand, and implores us to shine the flashlight if we can't figure out how to go further. The man explains that the flashlight needs batteries to work before completely leaving, moving through the tentacle-like pseudopods entirely, as if they weren't even there. I attempt to do the same and find my movements become sluggish and entangled. After a second or two, a bar towards the bottom of the screen starts depleting as well, draining what I assume to be health. I move towards the nearest door and unlock it using the last rusty key. Inside is another exhibit room. I examine the first pedestal and find a broken up note, with several words missing. 1 out of 5 is written towards the bottom, and I assumed we'll need to find 5 of these letters to decipher the full meaning. While mostly unintelligible, reading through the note I did pick up the use of creatures, Nazi, Warmia, and Professor Jersey Pilch, giving us absolutely no knowledge, but an idea of what we might expect in the future. I got the idea the theme centered around wartime experiments in the 40s, resulting in an abandoned group of people left to fend for themselves. In addition to the note, we also find batteries on a nearby pedestal and a couple notes explaining how to use them. I go to the inventory, combine the batteries with the flashlight so we have some small semblance of control over light, and shine the beam over the pseudopods, unlocking the path forwards. Wodnik calls out for us to quickly follow him, and the chapter concludes. The next chapter starts with Wodnik expositing once again, explaining that he has the pleasure of introducing another section on behalf of the supervisory board of the facility. We're warned that the rules of occupational health and safety must be met, and are advised to move stealthily in case of catastrophe. Tamaj pushes back once again, questioning the catastrophe, and Wodnik sharply retorts, stating with enough bad luck, Tamaj may get hit with a brick in a wooden church, and if anything down here sees us, we'll wind up dead. Tamaj is clearly not feeling it and asks if this is also part of the exhibition, to which Wodnik simply states yes, and reiterates that it's just for demonstrative purposes. Wodnik is truly a delight of a character to have as our guide and fill in for the devs to hold the player's hand here. With the dialogue out of the way, we are once again allowed to roam around. The flashlight starts off active, and I instantly turn it off to preserve battery life. I know it's a tutorial, but I'm overly cautious, and I don't want to find myself in a bad situation due to the lighting. I take a look at the menu and see the flashlight is currently sitting just below half capacity, and move on. A tooltip appears towards the bottom of the screen informing us that we can crouch, which I assume we would use to be stealthy around enemies. Entering a nearby doorway, we visit another exhibit room. Sitting atop a pedestal is a note, fully written this time. It was penned by an assistant curator, Michal Baczynski, back in 1979. Turns out they were recently made assistant curator at the Museum of the Warmia Land and sent to Jeziorn Kolonia, a town in Poland about 20 miles south of Warsaw. They conducted a visual inspection of the area and believed the work that needed to be done would be more involved than they initially thought. Apparently, the museum wants to find items of historical value, but they will need to be sorted. Michal goes on to explain that a subversive group resides in the tunnels, but hopes that the museum would be able to negotiate with them and work together for the greater good. Another prompt in the room tells us how crouching works. Pressing Control, we're able to crouch down, moving quietly, though enemies will still be aware of the flashlight beam if active. I leave the room and push onwards, encountering our very first enemy. I successfully sneak past them and make my way towards the other end of the hall, where I find a closed barred iron door. We're able to pick the door open, but it takes time as we wait for a gauge to fill. The premise then becomes very clear to me. In the future, in order for us to move on, we will need to be undetected in some way, whether we successfully sneak past enemies or kill whatever is around us, to make sure that we are not interrupted when opening the pathway through. This round was quite simple, however, and we opened the door with ease. Entering the next stretch, we meet with Wodnik yet again, as he opens stating that sneaking won't get us very far when there's light everywhere. He states that information about kicking and dodging will be coming up, and asks Tamaj if he's ever been in the army, to which he responds that he has. Wodnik likens the upcoming section to that of a welcome parade, or a demonstrative welcome parade, for giggles. For those of you who don't know, a welcome parade can refer to prisoners running a gauntlet. Most common forms would have seen soldiers in 2 lines, and the guilty party would run between them as the soldiers would lash out and strike at them. I believe the comparison here is that we'll be fighting for our life to run between enemies coming up in different stretches of hallways, and trying to avoid being caught or struck on the way through. It's notable that Wadnik talks with such glee, cementing that he's not particularly attached to Tamash or his fate. Making our way onwards, I notice that the segments between hallways with enemies seem to resemble living quarters, and begin to understand what the last note was referring to. Questions run through my mind, but the most often repeated being why. Not daring to think any more than I need to, I enter a doorway along the wall and find another exhibit room containing herbs. Herbs can be used as a small heal, or mixed together in the crafting process. Essentially, they're your green herb from Resident Evil. Investigating further, we find another prompt explaining how to dodge by pressing the spacebar. I move to the next hallway stretch to try and master our newfound skill against the enemies, successfully making it through the gauntlet. I enter another exhibit room and find a bottle of alcohol called Ador, which I have no idea how to pronounce, admittedly. It seems to be the combination between alcohol and herbs, though, resulting in a full heal. There's another note in the room as well. It's written as a log from someone living on the city streets. It turns out that a friend of theirs, by the name of Isdor, told them about the tunnels and how people live there. Their little band consists of themselves, Isdor, Jinek, Mundek, and Lodzia, with talk of someone by the name of Provost Antony who will be making an appearance soon. The plaque in the room explains that we can kick by pressing left click, hence why we're only able to interact with points of interest via the F key. We're also informed that kicking will destroy certain elements of the environment as well, such as wooden crates and barrels. To my absolute delight, we can kick Wadnik, who's in the room with us, and he reacts. It's small details like this that really add to the experience. With our newfound knowledge, we depart the room and make our way through the next gauntlet of enemies. I open the door and wait for the creature to make its way to the door, pass by, and sneak on through. I attempt to sneak by the second creature, but get caught, and it attacks me for nearly 2/3 of my health. I scramble, attempting to dash towards the end, but get caught by a third creature and end up dying. In the tutorial. I died in the tutorial. Holstin is not messing around, and I'll need to truly learn the game's mechanics to have an idea of how to proceed. I try once again, manage to fight back and kick my way through the horde, and after a little scrape, I make my way to the next safe zone. At this point, you should expect how the gameplay loop goes. New safe area, new door alongside the wall to enter that leads to an exhibit room, new information to find. Inside is another part of the broken up note we discovered earlier. Not much new information is brought up, but we'll check up on this later. Talking with Wadnik inside, he explains that kids are always leaving behind something, whether it's food, sweets, or even full backpacks. We retreat outside once again to make our way to the next segment. Here, I mess around with managing enemies once again and try to dash my way through the hallway. I manage to duck and weave through when I can see the doorways in sight and then ultimately get grabbed by one of the mutated creatures, absolutely chunking my health. When grabbed, there's a combination of arrow keys above your head, and if you input them correctly, you're released. But the window to do this is extremely tight. I die, yet again, and retry the hole. I did find the default brightness to be relatively dark, and opted to raise the brightness just a little bit to better see what was in the dark. At long last, I was able to make my way unscathed through the horde, and come out the other side to meet with Wadnik yet again. He congratulates us for making it through, and proceeds to say he needs to tell us something he neglected to mention earlier. But we'll find that out in the next chapter, as this section comes to a close. The next chapter begins with more dialogue between Wadnik and Tamash, discussing a new concept of energy. Wadnik alludes to the bar that's been appearing at the bottom center of the screen, indicating that it'll go down when we perform cumbersome actions, such as kicking or dodging. When the dialogue lets up, I move directly towards the closest door, leading to yet another exhibit room. The plaques talk about energy and regeneration rates, mentioning that if fully depleted, the bar will freeze before recharging, or how the bar will charge faster if standing completely still. There's also another note in the room, written from the perspective of a younger sister jealous of her rowdy brothers. She mentions wanting to know about their secret base and following them when they sneak away at night. Risik, I assume one of the brothers, found her, but she convinced him to let her stay because she promised not to tell the mom about their secret. The note ends describing how dirty and unkempt the tunnels are. There is a last note which alludes to whoever the writer is directing the letter towards, explaining that it's alright that they're afraid to come out and they'll keep leaving notes for them. I'm absolutely baffled as to what or who this could be alluding to, and even more importantly, why. I exit the room and maneuver towards the next gated entry. We meet with Wadnik again, who attempts to explain how the energy bar acts differently when we get hit, going so far as to offer a physical demonstration, taking our bar all the way down to the last quarter. While the bar is at this stage, Tamash not only moves slower, but his walking animation has changed. The audio has changed to sound more muffled or distorted, and the colors grow so much more muted. I stumble into a nearby exhibit room to read yet more information. A nearby poster informs us that in the full release, we'll be able to upgrade Tamash's abilities and weapons that we find. Alcohol is found on the center pedestal, and I assume this is used with the herbs we found earlier to craft Ador. A nearby plaque goes into more detail over the concept of energy. Essentially, our energy and health are linked. The less health we have, the less energy we can use. If we are at half health or 2 bars gone, a kick or dodge will completely drain energy, meaning the recharge will freeze a bit before coming back. If we're at 1/4 health like we are now, we can no longer run, so that's fun. We hobble to the next entryway where we find herbs on the center pedestal. Just beside it is a package of Kofiko, which the nearby poster is so helpful in explaining will fully recover spent energy and freeze its consumption for a little bit. Another plaque gives us another log from the assistant curator, Mikau. It turns out he was able to conduct an inspection of items throughout the tunnels. There were a number of German World War II uniforms, books from the 30s and 40s, silver cutlery, and unique clothing strewn about. With these discoveries, Mikau asked the museum for assistance in identifying the items and providing descriptions. He also had hopes of having someone come by to assist in negotiating with the residents to relocate. After reading the logs, I combined the herbs with the alcohol to successfully craft Ador, taking a swig to completely heal up. Our next round of the gauntlet begins, and I successfully dip, dive, duck, kick, and weave my way through the hallway like an expert now. We reach the end, where Wodnik is already miraculously waiting for us, congratulating our successful endeavor. Tamash makes a snide comment that he doesn't particularly enjoy the exhibit, to which Wodnik gleefully retorts, saying the next section is even better. And we get to see if what Zhemislov says is true or not immediately. Chapter 4 opens with more dialogue. Tamash asks if he can be let go, to which Wodnik explains not until Tamash can meet his demands. He also makes a joke, stating that he is on tour, placing Tamash in the guide role while he becomes the visitor in his stead. In order for us to make any progress now, he's willing to continue the tour if we're able to secure a picture of the Pope. Great. And the race is off. We start to explore some more of the non-linear gameplay here, as we're able to head left or right first, and I assume we would need to cover both of these directions to make it back to Wodnik. The formula is going to remain somewhat consistent coming up. There will be stretches of hallways filled with enemies that we need to navigate through before arriving at the next designated safe area, where we find doorways and other interactive points of interest. Speaking of, the nearby door leads to another exhibit room where we pick up some supplies, such as herbs, our first weapon, the P64 pistol, and handgun bullets. One of the displays goes over the aiming tutorial, explaining to hold the right mouse button to enter the aiming mode. Energy doesn't restore while we're moving and aiming, and while we can't enter the aim mode in safe areas, we can still reload weapons or use restoration items. The last poster reviews how to reload by pressing R. We take our leave and continue through the nearby hallway. I immediately try aiming with the pistol and I'm taken back by the fluidity of aiming. While movement itself is slow, aiming is quick and feels great. I rush to the other side to unlock the door and get punished by the nearby enemy. I quickly dispatch them and continue forwards, finding alcohol and nails here. I don't have enough room to carry the nails, so I craft items in my inventory and free up room. The nails we learn are used in crafting to make ammo for some kind of firearm. I enter another exhibition room and find a ton of items on pedestals requiring some inventory management. Among the items are nails, a small pouch increasing the inventory space by 1, gunpowder, another item used in crafting ammo, and handgun bullets. One poster in the room explains how to craft Ador using the alcohol and herbs, while the other explains handgun bullets are created using nails and gunpowder. I head back to the safety area outside to pick up gunpowder, but my inventory is still too full. I figured I could discard the excess handgun bullets I had on me to craft more and fill that slot instead. Noted that discarded items cannot be recovered, and decided to play with the new toys in the next hallway. Inventory management out of the way, we head onwards. I note the first enemy doesn't have a head, flailing about helplessly, not seeming to notice my presence. I aimed for the leg of the mutated, and to my surprise, the leg completely tore off the creature, though it kept crawling around aimlessly. Picking the gunpowder back up, I craft more handgun bullets and continue on, unsuccessful in dodging the couple enemies remaining. I miss a handful of shots, retreat back to heal up, and try again. I cause one of the mutated to fall, though it performs some sort of shockwave attack that extends beyond the iron grating. Soon enough, both are dispatched though, and I continue onwards. In the next safe area, we pick up some alcohol and craft the bottle of Ador for future use. We also find a set of batteries, quickly combining them with the flashlight, bringing us up to nearly a full charge. One of the entries is locked. We don't have a key, so I assume we'll need to backtrack at some point once we find a key, if I can remember. The other door is unlocked, and inside we find another small pouch, giving us even more inventory space. There's also another letter describing the stay inside the tunnels. Isidore is mentioned once again, stating that the items left behind were from the German occupation, or those who resided in the tunnels after the war, the current residents being bums, junkies, or teens who ran away from their home. Provost Anthony is mentioned again, explaining that he had come from the church to bring blankets and left Bibles. A different colored door is also present back at the safe area, though we're told it's only for authorized personnel and are unable to venture through. I retrace my steps, visit Wadnik once again, and head through the other entry down the hall. I sneak past more mobs, biding my time to crouch by undetected. Or try to. I eventually got fed up of waiting, rush out from my hidey hole, and kick a nearby mutated so it falls to the floor, and I can focus on unlocking the door to the next safe zone. Exploring this zone, we collect some herbs and another pack of batteries. I finish sweeping the cell and enter the doorway, collecting another small pouch, a rusty key, gunpowder, and nails. I'm out of space for the nails, so I combine the batteries with the flashlight and clear up some inventory space to craft more ammo. The plaque in the room explains a bit more about what happens when targeting various parts of enemies' bodies, which I found kind of reminiscent of the Dead Space limb system. Decapitating an enemy means they can't track you, as we saw earlier. Shoot the arms off if you want them unable to physically attack you, and shoot the legs off so they can't come chase you. What I've been seeing as mutated parts are called distorted here, noting that these body parts are harder to dismember. With the rusty key in possession, I rush back to the other side, taking a bit of damage on the way there. Suffering through the enemies, I'm able to finally open the locked door. We approach one of the pedestals and pick up a telephone card that has a picture of the Pope on the back, which should make Wadnik happy. The other pedestal contains another note from the assistant curator, sharing a local legend explaining that the tunnels were built by Nazis to keep and torture prisoners. After the war ended, the soldiers left the tunnels without ever unlocking the rooms. Locals believe that those who died in the tunnels still haunt the place to this day, to which Mikhail believes should be included in the description to amp up the excitement. He believes they should have everything ready to open in about a year and a half's time. He goes on to say that while the project has been successful, they've also had a number of technical difficulties, including equipment loss, electrical shortages, and a lack of cooperation from the locals, noting that his plea for a negotiation expert was left unanswered. Unable to press on any further, we've returned to Wadnik with the picture in hand. A quick conversation later, and the chapter concludes. On to Chapter 5, second to last chapter here. Wadnik starts off the conversation, stating the board is very proud of the showpieces in this section in particular. After a bit of playful banter between Tomasz and Wadnik, once again we are free to roam. Entering a nearby doorway, we can pick up a bottle of Vador, and I notice our inventory looks a bit different. The top 4 slots of the inventory now have the numbers 1 through 4, corresponding to a hotkey slot as indicated towards the bottom right of the screen. We also stuff a package of Kofiko into our pocket and find another letter that's been left behind. It details the traditional day spent in the tunnels, giving more context to the residents. I didn't get much information off this particular entry, though it's worth noting that ghosts, yelling at night, and steal things are bolded, as is your name, referring to whoever this letter was written for. The plaque in the room reviews the hotkeys that we saw earlier, explaining that when pressed will swap to the corresponding weapon or use the restoration item that occupies that specific slot. I try to creep my way through the following hallway, get surrounded by enemies, and quickly duck back to the safe zone. I attempt to crawl back before taking massive damage. I heal up early in and get right back in there, deciding to slowly pick off the mutated with headshots. Though instead of trying to decapitate them, I opt to kick them down so they crawl for a few seconds, rush to the door, and enter the next safe zone. Here we find a bottle of alcohol, a small pouch, and some more goodies in the next exhibit room. The poster in the room mentions the AK-17 and how it takes nails and scrap to make its ammo. We find the AK on one of the pedestals and find out that it takes multiple slots in our inventory, which makes sense, it is a larger item after all. We also find a small pouch, nails, and scrap on the other pedestals as well. After configuring the inventory a bit, we head out, pick up some herbs to craft a bottle of Vador, and head to the next hallway. I fire off a couple rounds from the AK to get a feel for how it shoots and take out the first mutated. I walk past the decapitated mutated and make it to the next stretch of the hallway. I wait to see if the mutated will enter through the doorway to find out it does indeed, and I don't have a backup plan. I try to scurry past and rush the end, get grabbed by another enemy, and die once again. Trying again, I wait a bit more, get instantly grabbed, and die. Third time's the charm, I guess. I decide to aggro this time around, kicking the first 2 mutated but still get caught. I then get lost in the darkness, find myself trapped, and game over. I finally managed to separate the enemies and make it to the next hallway, taking the opportunity to heal up from the sustained hits. I'm able to sneak through the next section with no issues and make it to the next safe zone. Finally. Taking a bit of a breather, we collect some gunpowder, scrap, a couple rusty keys, and a small pouch before entering a nearby door using one of the keys. Before exploring further, I head to an unlocked door leading to another exhibit room. Here we find a note from a curator by the name of Hannah Chislik. It seems she was instituted in place of Mikau and took a more authoritative and proactive approach to managing the work for the museum, getting things in order to open the exhibit sooner than expected. She also mentioned working with the local military police to relocate the occupants, coupled with aid from the church. More gunpowder and herbs are collected, and we finally add the shotgun to our library of weapons, after managing inventory space and making some shells using scrap and gunpowder. Reading the nearby poster, we learn about the shotgun and how to craft ammo for it. I proceed to the door opened earlier with a rusty key and flip on the light, to find something more akin to a common room. I find some alcohol and decide to get rid of the coffee code to make room and craft some Ador. I pick up some handgun and rifle ammo and use nails to make even more handgun bullets. I dash into the upcoming stretch of hallway, nearly unlock the door, get absolutely messed up, and retreat back to lick my wounds. Next time, I instead choose violence, pay the price, and try to manage my way through the hallway. I open up the next door, pick off a few mutated in the way, and almost make my way out before getting absolutely sniped by this dude dashing at me. I'm able to make my way back, kick a crate to distract nearby mutated, and open the door to the next safe zone. I rush to a nearby door to unlock it with my last rusty key, pick up a small pouch sitting around nearby, pick up yet another key, and enter the door we open, collecting some scrap, alcohol, shotgun shells, and nails. We also discover a new addition to a prior letter, detailing the adventures of Lodzia, Isidore, and Mundek. The author hears noises all the time, but is shut down by the rest of her friend circle. There is talk of Provost Antony once again, but it seems he hasn't visited since he was last mentioned. I craft some more rifle ammo and head down to the other doorway. Inside is another utility room, finding more rifle ammo, nails, and gunpowder, which I use to make pistol ammo. Additionally, we find another entry from Hana. The log mentions how big of a success the exhibit is, especially from school trips. Lastly, I find a bottle of alcohol, and I feel so bogged down by how much I have in my inventory right now that I wonder if I should even grab it. I head out to the next stretch of hallway and decapitate one of the nearby mutated with the AK, firing in short bursts to try and avoid wasting ammo. A couple shots later, we unlock the door to the next stretch, and I'm starting to feel like a pro. Managing the flow between movement and combat is starting to feel like second nature. Or at least it would until I get too cocky, find myself trapped because I literally never use the flashlight, corner myself next to an enemy, and blow up. We get back to where we were, get caught, die again, and again, and again. A bit of bumbling later, and we eventually manage to juke and survive, finding ourselves in the company of Vodnik one last time. He keeps up the premise of guiding us on the tour, asking how we like the exhibits, explaining some of the pieces were even donated by some of the higher-ups involved. We get a sneaky little line from him that there will even be a questionnaire to fill out. Tamash asks if we have to, very dryly. Vodnik closes by saying he wants to show us a list of names of the people who prepared the exhibition and the staff credits roll. Vodnik thanks us on behalf of the board of directors and asks us to fill out the questionnaire and add Holstin to our wish list as the chapter comes to a close. And with that, my friends, the final chapter is upon us. It combines everything we have learned so far into a cohesive work of gameplay. Zemislav is not here to guide or assist us. We are finally, truly alone. The goal is to keep moving through the chambers, looting items, dodging or killing enemies, and outpace the growing tentacle-like pseudopods. Oh, I didn't mention the constantly growing massive tentacles growing behind us? You didn't just think the pseudopods were stationary now, did you? I definitely did. I cannot tell you how surprised I was to find the pseudopods, or pseudoplasm as the game now calls it, slowly move in, and it made the tension rise so much higher. I no longer had the luxury of trying to manage inventory at my own pace, or take my time and wait for enemies to reposition themselves. No, I now had a ticking time bomb behind me, albeit a relatively slow ticking bomb. You will start with a loadout consisting of a full inventory. Over the course of playing, you'll need to fight or sneak your way through hallways filled with enemies as we have been doing. The catch is, some enemies will have an icon of a key above their head. This means that upon defeat, they will drop a rusty key, what we've used to unlock storerooms to stock up on supplies. Other enemies have the chance to drop items on death, but it is not guaranteed. This adds another factor to consider. Do you think you're ready to hold off on supplies and skip enemies? Or can you spend time to clear a couple of enemies in the hope of finding a storeroom that might have something you need soon? Add in the tentacles chasing you, and the decision has to be made in a few seconds, unable to hover around for too long. I only made a couple of runs during my time with the demo, but I certainly think it was well worth playing. My first run ended rather abruptly due to an air of overconfidence that was absolutely undeserved, as I think the segments from Chapter 5 so wonderfully highlight. Oh, now that we've reached the end, I want to take a second and talk about my full thoughts about the demo so far. There's still more to come in 2025, and I'm excited to see what fresh ideas it has in store. The pacing for the current sections was absolutely tremendous in my opinion, letting the player slowly settle in and get used to what the game was asking from them. In every part of the demo, there was a natural through line in order to obtain the next key to progress. While the Janowski house started off in a relatively linear fashion, there were several moments where you needed to backtrack, adding a sense of excitement when you were able to open more of a room up. A similar feeling to playing a Metroidvania when you get a new upgrade and revisit an area that you thought you've already cleared. And with the tunnels, the sense of progress developed in each run, coupled with learning how to game the system or just, get better, that felt solid and rewarding in its own right. And while I think there's some critique to be had about adding superfluous details in games, I adore the non-elements and fluff included in sections like the Janowski house, like the bottle of vodka or the folk plates adorning the kitchen wall. Not only does it pad out the game and make the world feel more alive through mundanity, it also forces the player to question what to interact with or direct their attention to, or even just question its inclusion. Discounting Maciek as we never get to really see him, the demo was so focused on forming a desolated and abandoned household that once I actually saw a person, I was terrified. I'm still kind of mystified at how the game trained me to become comfortable in the lonely setting, fully aware that there was something else alive in the house. But instead of wanting to find it, I desperately hoped to continue avoiding it, even if they turned out to be relatively friendly. I believe it speaks leagues to the human nature and conditioning that we can receive. However, once we get to the tunnels, our interaction with Zemislav Wodnik is very different. While not fully antagonistic, he does make it clear that we're not quite buddy-buddy either. Our trek through the tunnels isn't quite as isolated as the Janowski house, and the same kind of tension is not there, especially not when we have weapons to defend ourselves. That said, the stress of conserving ammo and trying to avoid a chaotic room fully takes over, keeping some amount of tension present, albeit in a different way. The combat, admittedly, while a little clunky to learn, certainly felt intuitive in its own right, as a delightful blend of a fresh new taste on an older style. The aiming felt arcadey and slick, and the counterplay between measuring stamina and health, then deciding if it was worth trying to engage enemies was certainly rewarding in its own right. The looming danger of the pseudopods closing in was certainly a welcome addition, providing a sense of urgency and upping the stakes for lingering in one place for too long. Based on some of the dialogue, I do wonder if the story is going to follow a Silent Hill-esque narrative where Tomasz is attempting to follow the trail of Bartek, but the player slowly discovers that Tomasz is perhaps a bit delusional and has truly been Bartek all along, or something along those lines. I want to know more about why the ooze appears to be oceanic in nature, and why or how the mutations even started in the first place. I mean, sure, we get a taste of that in the tunnels, but with the focus on the World War II era, the experiments that were run, some of the logs and journals that were left behind, but I want more. Regardless, I am ecstatic to see how this title evolves, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the full release. And hey, if you're here after all of this, I thank you from the deepest reaches of my heart. I've wanted to jump into new long-form content for some time now, but the idea of cataloging my thoughts and ideas is very foreign to me. I do sincerely hope that you all enjoyed. And if you've played the Holstin demo, did you agree with my takes or ideas? Do you disagree? If you haven't played yet, Have I convinced you? Let me know down in the comments. I have a number of games to catch up on since I've started streaming, and you can expect more videos coming out. If you enjoy the content, please do like and subscribe. I have plans on returning to Twitch and streaming more consistently after a big move across the country, and I've got lots of moving parts going on there to catch up. Once again, you can follow along at twitch.tv/HeyIt'sDale to view some of what we'll be covering on the channel there live before it gets here. And last, but certainly not least, a huge shout out to all of my wonderful subscribers and supporters over on Twitch. Never would I have been here without even a fraction of the support from you guys. This has been Dale. I'm tired, and I'll see you all in the next video.